Hey folks, Sage here again. At the time of writing, my most recent devlog was 47 days ago, so I felt like it would be worth giving you all an update on what I've been up to. If you're new here, hi, I'm Sage, and I'm making a mech-action roguelike called Riot. Let's get into it. After posting the most recent devlog, I went out of town for the weekend for a friend's bachelor party. Why do I mention this? Well, because it was really the longest break I'd taken from working on the game since the first wave of playtesting began, and it gave me some time to think. I realized that I was completely exhausted. I had been in last-minute crunch mode for way too long. When the itch.io playtest started, I thought I was relatively close to being ready for the Steam playtest, thinking the Steam demo would be close behind after that. However, new issues kept coming up in playtesting, and some of them ran a bit deeper than bug fixes and quality of life features. Serious game design problems that would affect Riot's longevity, not something worth risking. At some point, after receiving feedback like this, it's important to take a step back and plan your next move, something I only realized after stopping to breathe. When I got home from the bachelor party, I decided I would take a week off from working on the game. One of the things they don't tell you about game development, though, is that a shocking amount of it happens while you're away from your desk. How, you may ask? Well, there's this handy software called Remote Desktop, which, really, what I'm talking about is planning. Any programmer who knows their stuff will tell you that you can save yourself a ton of time and effort by thinking through your solutions ahead of time. When you're sitting at your desk writing out code, it's easy to get tunnel vision and make a bunch of decisions without thinking. When you're away from your desk, though, you process the problem in the background, and you'll tend to approach solutions very differently. Where am I going with this? Great question. During my week off, I found myself thinking about other solutions to the progression problems I'd been running into. I realized something pretty important. That randomly acquired infinitely stacking mods, like the ones you'd find in Risk of Rain, would never be the right fit for Riot. Why? Well, a couple reasons. Firstly, a practical concern related to being a solo indie developer. When playing a roguelike, it's pretty important to have some easy way to remind yourself of how your build works during gameplay. This isn't a major concern in some games, but in a roguelike where you could have a different build every 10 minutes, it's not always reasonable to remember all the ins and outs at all times. Risk of Rain handles this by having little icons at the top of your screen for each item you're carrying, but frankly, I don't know that I'm up for making a separate icon for every power-up available to the player. I think this would cause me to make less content due to the art bottleneck, and I really don't want to limit myself that way. The other reason is related to big-picture game design. One of the big problems with Riot's progression system was that you'd often feel like you were doing the same thing from one run to the next. Part of this was due to weapons feeling largely quite similar. As you may have seen in my last devlog, my initial solution for this involved limiting the player's access to weapons, but there was a bigger problem. Mods that affect all your weapons in the same way will inevitably cause all your weapons to behave more and more similarly over the course of your run, and I don't think any change I could have made outside of the mod system would have solved that. So, with this in mind, I decided to move toward a more targeted solution. I decided that I would separate the upgrades into different categories and that they would be more specific. So here's the plan. Volatile mods, previously the stackable upgrades, are sticking around. However, they work a little differently now. The player now has 6 slots to fill with volatile mods instead of infinite, and they are now much more focused on providing mechanical changes that will change how the player plays the game. Things like causing dodged missiles to become friendly, creating an explosion on landing during a downward dash boost, or zapping nearby enemies upon depleting your energy. They also no longer stack, but have a rarity system. Now, this is less slots than before, but I really think the impact per mod will be much higher. The other side of this is weapons. I've come up with a system I'm calling weapon augments, upgrades which change the behavior of your weapons, but only the weapon they're equipped to. This means that each of your weapons is likely to behave much more differently than the next. Augments do things like add status effects, create explosions on hit, and increase damage based on how empty your magazine is. Additionally, if you have 2 statuses on a weapon, they combine to create a new, unique, ultra-powerful status. So, how do you get your hands on these upgrades? Great question. Like many of you, I assume, I've been playing Elden Ring Night Rain lately. While playing, I had an epiphany. Random loot is awesome, and it's a big part of why I'm making the game I am. I love the high of finding a rare, powerful drop, and I love how it feels to have that power in your hand for the rest of your run. Riot has always been a looter, at least in terms of how you acquire new parts for your rig, so why would I try to reinvent the wheel for the mid-run progression? I really believe that this game has only made it as far as it has due to being a game that I want to play, so I'm going to trust my instincts here and deliver progression similar to a looter, and I'm going to trust that you all want the same. The plan for the moment is that the player earns loot drops by completing challenges throughout the stage and choosing one reward to take from the options they are given. Basically, it's still Risk of Rain's system as far as the challenges go, but the loot is presented much more like the boss rewards in Night Rain, and weapons are rolled with augments based on rarity and things like that. Anyway, that's a lot about the game design decisions I've been working on, so you may be wondering where progress is at overall. I wish this could be the part where I shadow drop the Steam playtest, but we're not quite there. The new reward system is well underway though, and after it's fully implemented, I plan to add a bit more content before starting the Steam playtest. From there, I'll be focusing on fixing bugs, adding quality of life features, improving performance, and other general polish tasks until I feel the game is ready to be a demo. I really appreciate your patience in all this, and as they say, a delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad. Also, if you've been watching the gameplay on screen, you'll have noticed that the rig models look like a million times better. A member of the game's Discord community, who goes by Stunky Funky, had a work placement to do for school and asked if he could take the opportunity to make some 3D models for Rig Riot. I had meant to revisit some of the older designs myself eventually, so I figured it would be nice to have that off my plate, especially since it provides him with some very practical work experience. He's done an incredible job breathing new life into the game while still being true to my original vision for everything. I've genuinely been blown away by every redesign so far, and I hope you all love the new look as much as I do. Anyway, I know this is probably a shorter and simpler devlog than what you're used to from me, but I wanted to make sure to keep the community up to date on how development is progressing without impacting my limited development time too much. If you all like this format, I can probably get videos out a little more regularly, so just let me know. If you like what you're seeing with this game, I would love it if you'd wishlist the game on Steam and tell anybody you know about it if you think they'd be interested. If you'd like to keep up with how things are progressing, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel for updates. You can also try out the playtest over on itch.io, though that version is a bit old at this point. Thanks to all my supporters on Patreon for helping me make all this possible, and special thanks to Bill Nye the Bounty Guy for supporting at the operative tier. Patreon and all the other things are linked in the description below if you'd like to check them out. Anyway, if you made it this far, you're the coolest. I'll see you next time.